सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। शांति शांति शांति।
How can yoga help prepare us for the transition into death? And part 2 is, did Krishnamacharya transition into death peacefully?
Why do you want to ask the question about death now? Let's live and enjoy our life.
That's why.
Anyway, Sherin will, readjust the. Don't start with death. He will not. Okay? See, the very purpose of the practice of yoga is realization of one's own consciousness, which refers to attaining a state of peace, attaining a state of transcending the body, transcending the mind, the feelings of etc. So therefore, that is the very purpose of the practice of yoga. That is, the purpose of the practice of yoga is to attain a state of kaivalyam, which is beyond death. A state of moksha, what they might call, or a state of nirvana, what the Buddhists call. So, the purpose of the practice of yoga itself is to transcend the mind and go beyond the death. That is what we have been teaching in Amritam, right? Asatoma sadgamaya satoma amritam gamaya. That is the purpose of the practice of yoga. Tamasoma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. So that's the very purpose of the practice of yoga. So that is, you were, in a way, though you said about death, it's a one way of presenting and asking the question. You can even say, how can yoga help to transcend that we are the body? Because there is death only with the body. There is no death for the consciousness. That is a fundamental. So I hope you got it. So look at it from the opposite lens. Don't look at it from the lens of death. Then, as a consequence of this question itself, consequence, I think that's okay. How do we know whether a person has surpassed this? Can be only a proof you can get it in this life. That is, through the practice of yoga, through the state of samadhi, if you are able to feel or transcend, that is, that is the purpose of the practice.
The best way to prepare for dying is to lead a life filled with meaning. Death is certain, but when we look back at our life, what has my life meant? That is a question that we should not prepare for when we receive the news that, hey, you're going to pop off in a year. It's something that we weave into our life all through the journey of life. The more the meaning, significance that our life has, paradoxically actually, transitioning from life becomes easier because we feel that we have fulfilled our purpose. We have done what we need to do. The other point my father was making is that, as the Yoga Sutra says, a state of I am not my body is one of the most valuable practices we can do that can prepare us for this transition. Instead of thinking I am not my body, perhaps a better way to put it is that I am something greater than my body. I am boundless, I am timeless. This experience that I am something greater than my body, greater than my mind, I am connected to something greater than my body, greater than my mind, I am without limits in time or space. That is the state of non-dual awareness that the Upanishads and many of the ancient texts talk about. That experience is accessible to us gradually through meditation, not as an uncontrolled disassociation, oh my God, I've lost my body, not that, but as a state that we look forward to, that we gradually access, that I am something greater than what I just experienced in my mundane self here. As a practice, if we gradually cultivate that experience, that can be profoundly helpful in removing the fear and anxiety surrounding death and transitions.
Thank you, boss.
I'm your ghost speaker, interpreting what you say.
My question is, was Krishnamacharya a bhakti yogi? Could you please talk about his use of bhakti devotion in his practice?
Yes. It is, he is actually a Vaishnavite, most of you know. If you look into his photograph, you can see the foremark on his forehead. You can see the mark. He is a Vaishnavite. In fact, he often used to say bhakti is the only way to reach that highest state of yoga. Devotion to the divine is the only way. Especially he used to say, the Yoga Sutras talk about the highest state of detachment. It is not possible. Bhakti is the only way. Any next one? Have answered? Anything else you asked there in that question?
That's a very short answer to a very deep question.
What do you want to say?
I don't. I want you to say more.
He wanted to know, he wasn't asking about Bhakti Yoga and all that. He was only asking whether Krishnamacharya was a Bhakti Yogi.
Yeah.
I said yes. So which means you know what Bhakti is, what Bhakti Yoga is all about. So I am presuming.
This is the ancient Upanishadic way of teaching. Student comes, teacher says, go back and meditate.
No, not even go back and meditate. He gives a mantra and say, get lost. Yeah.
I remember when I studied the first time Yoga Sutra with you, it was approximately when I was 15 years old, I think. I remember in that house we have at Palavakkam, very soon after we moved there, I remember formally asking my father to study the Yoga Sutra. It was okay.
I
Looking
don't
back
know.
25 years ago, but that is also part of what you wanted to say, in the sense that my parents have been together now for 48 years now. And the year you met Krishnamacharya was the year you were married.
Yeah.
1971. So they have been both together in this whole journey, partly because my mother is very spiritual. She is very she is pretty much as you see her, that she is always calm, she is always like this, and
She's
this has always
always
been her.
sattvic. She's never, I can't ever remember my mother raising her voice. Ever. Yeah.
One of my very close friends, therefore, actually asked me this once, does your mother never get angry? What? I kind of don't think so. So they spent the first 18 years, until 1989, in that milieu, the time of the studies with Krishnamacharya and the surroundings, they've actually spent another 30 years after that studying further. Actually, that's the much greater part of their studies than the time with Krishnamacharya, the first 18 years. And so, 25 years ago, when I studied Yoga Sutra with my father, my parents, there's a lot more now. There's a lot more depth and clarity now.
That's very true. When I first got married and came to Singapore in 1996, and there was a student of my parents there in Singapore at that time, and she requested me to, because I didn't really know too many people in Singapore at that time, and I actually first started with some Yoga Sutra classes. So I just wanted to revise, with my father that, okay, I was saying the right things before I went out there to teach a formal class in Singapore for the first time. So I remember I still have those notes that I made on a Skype class with him from here, because I was in Singapore. I think it was on the phone, not even Skype then. It was probably on the phone. Yeah, and then I made those notes. But now actually, if I go back to those notes made in 1996, what he says today is so much deeper than what he told me in 1996. I mean, even to the extent of sometimes if I tell him, you said this, no, forget that. This is, he will say, no, that's okay, but this is the real meaning, or this is, because this is what, we were talking about last week. So their studies have actually themselves deepened over the last 30 years, even after they finished studying with Krishnamacharya.
What do you do with that?
What do you do in the shower when you're having a bath?
Say a mantra.
You sing?
Saying a mantra.
Correct.
Really, because yadapam krurai yadamedhyam yadashantam tadapagacchatat atyashanadati panat yaccha ugrat pratigrahat tanme varuno raja padina hyavamarshatu. This is a mantra. For example, they say, when the water is flowing on you, this is a mantra they use when they take bath in the river Ganges. The point is, we consider for example, water as a deity, Varuna. Varuna is a deity for water. So we always say, let the coolness in that water flow on me. I might have spoken something harsh to somebody else. I might have overeaten. I might have done some of the other. My thought process would not have been so very organized. Let all these things go away. Let the rajas in me, the hyperactive tendency in me, go away. Let the water that is flowing on myself, on the back, remove all this. This is a mantra, for example, they use in the Vedas, when you have a bath, you purify yourself using a mantra. They have actually, these are all samskaras, what I have been talking about.